Welcome to episode 48 of Retro Recall the PS1 Chronicles, a show where we play and rank every PlayStation game ever created. My name is Jimmy, and as always, I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
So a little weird. This is our first episode we're recording in about 6 weeks because I've been on tour. So
I have been fumbling my way around everything so much. I'm so rusty right now.
yeah, I mean, for people listening or watching, it will literally be no time gap, no difference, but just know that if this one feels a little different or a little off, that is why.
I'm honestly, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I forgot to bring this up. I need this reference thing. And like, I can't believe how 6 weeks just ruined my brain with what we do here.
I was doing the same thing. I just have like a checklist. I'm like, what did I forget? Like I was making the project to record in. I'm like, I forgot how to do this. Just so many dumb little things that I mess up, you know?
Yeah. So I guess elephant out of the room, Balatro came out on mobile. That should be a big talking point.
Yes, it has. And, we picked this game that we're playing today to play while I was gone. You know, it's a longer game. And I ended up just mostly playing Balatro. So
I bought it day one when it came out. Like I checked the app store when I first woke up and it's like, oh, it's still in like pre-release. I'm like, oh, maybe it's not going to come out today. Get to work and it was released. Boom, bought it instantly while I was at work.
It's available on Apple Arcade, which I have because I'm on a plan with like other people. And I still paid for it because I'm like, they deserve it. They deserve my money.
Dude, that guy hit it big. Just this year alone, from the amount, just in the original release and now in the mobile release, the amount of money this guy's making is incredible. And good for him, like making just a solid game.
Literally a perfect game. I can't think of one thing I would change about it.
As we said, we've both watched Northern Line, who plays that game or played that game a lot. I went into that game so confidently that I'm like, oh, I've watched streams. I'm like, yeah, I just need to get this stuff and I'm good. I lost immediately within the first boss.
You got to learn the tricks on your own. You know what I mean? It's like there's those little things that you just don't pick up on. And then once you play it a whole bunch, you're like, I know exactly what I have to do in almost every situation.
Yeah, I'm still picking up that stuff. This is what I love about the game. Now actually getting to play it is you always hit a ceiling where you can't get higher than that. And then eventually you do get past that. And then now you have a new ceiling that you have to hit. Like for the longest time, I could barely break 100,000. Finally got past that. Now I'm like consistently hitting 100,000. Then my breaking point was like 500. And then I got to like, I could never get to 1 million. And I just played recently where I broke 150 million in a hand. I'm like, wow, this is like, I'm doing so good this run.
You know, the only actual complaint I would have about it is to get those super high scores, there's like only a few combinations of jokers you can really use.
Yeah. My biggest complaint I've had with this game so far is just it feels like 8 antes isn't enough time to build the deck you want to build. That's my only complaint. There's so many times where I'm like, I'm trying to get a build going and before I know it, I'm at the final boss. I'm like, but I'm not done. Like there's so much more I need to do.
I actually feel that 100% because it feels like it's just getting fun. Like you're like, wow, I finally got it. And then it's like, oh, it's over.
Exactly.
You play endless mode and like, there's no point to playing endless mode at all. Like, yeah, I mean, getting a higher score, fine. Once you hit, I think, ante 12, you unlock a joker and then that's it. Like you don't get anything else after that.
So at that point, it's more or less it's just to see how far you can make it at that point.
Yeah. Like there's no reason to keep going, and that's what sucks.
Yeah. And I've only made it to ante 11, where I got absolutely destroyed. And unfortunately couldn't make it farther. But it's like you said, like you're always trying to find what's the best combination of stuff. And I always hate like you're trying to build a deck and then you get this really good joker that doesn't go with what you're trying to build. And you're like, oh, do I change my whole strategy now at this point?
Yeah. There's just certain jokers that I love. I'd say probably my favorite one to use is probably Wii Joker, if you've ever used that.
I don't think so. No, what does that one do?
It accumulates chips every single time you play a 2.
Oh, okay.
And then I usually get Hack, which re-triggers the 2s. So before you know it, I'm adding like a freaking 1,000 chips per hand.
Nice.
And then it just gets out of control from there.
Yeah, the one where I was hitting like 150 million, the combo I was running was every card is counted as a face card. And then another one that went with that was discarding 3 face cards gets you $5. So I'm just stacked on money from that alone. And then every single thing out was also with dealing with face cards with my mults and my times mults. So it was just cruising along.
Yeah, the way to get the crazy scores is the re-triggers, and then like re-triggering steel cards and all that. You can get out of control so fast.
Oh yeah, that was the final Joker in my lineup was re-trigger all the face cards. So,
but yeah, I mean, overall, we're at about the end of this year almost, and this is my favorite game I've played all year.
Yep. Even through the few weeks I've been playing, it's one of my favorites so far. I've even stopped playing Slay the Spire because I've just specifically been focusing on Balatro.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just started one other game, which I'm going to briefly bring up, and then I will bring it up again at some point in the future. But I started today. I just wanted to try it for a few minutes, and then I ended up playing it for 4 hours. Metaphor Refantasio. You know what this is?
I was going to bring this up as well.
So I played like 3 to 4 hours of it today.
I didn't know anything about this, and I just saw it pop up on Reddit about this whole thing. It's like, oh, what is this? It's from Atlas. That's interesting. And I look into it, and I just from the screenshots, I know I'm going to love this game. So what is your take on it so far?
It's literally almost exactly Persona.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the next step after Persona 5. So there's so many little things they've improved. There's so many like just quality of life features that make it so much smoother. But like, I'm still like, this is a Persona game. So I am still in the watching cutscenes, doing tutorials part.
Oh, it is a Persona game.
Almost exactly, yeah. I mean, it has the same combat. It has the social links. It has all that.
Oh, but I thought you meant it's in the series of Persona, but it's not, right?
No. It's like if you took Persona, put it into like a medieval Game of Thrones style world. That's what it is.
That's really cool.
Now, how long will I be playing this for till I finish it? Who fucking knows?
Yeah, the update will be like, all right, so I put like 120 hours into this game.
Well, it's funny. I thought about getting it on my Steam Deck because I'm like, I'm probably not going to finish this before I go on tour again.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's literally 80 to 100 hours to beat it. So like, I thought about it and I'm like, well, I haven't decided yet because the 3 to 4 hours I've played are just the demo.
Oh.
Yeah, the demo carries over to the real game and it's just the beginning of the game.
Interesting. Okay. See, the thing I hate about it, like this game looks so good and I know I'm going to love it because it follows Persona exactly. I just don't have that many hours to put into the game. So I know it's going to be forever before I finally get to it.
Yeah, today was a special occasion because I didn't have any band things going on. But going forward, I'll be lucky to put in a couple hours a week. But, you know, whatever. Like, I'll play it for as long as I need to.
Exactly.
It's really cool so far. But yeah, with that, I think we should just go ahead and hop into this game. Alundra was released on January 7th, 1998. It was developed by Matrix Software and published by Working Designs. And this is an action-adventure game. I saw it in a lot of places being called an RPG, which is why I picked it. But we'll get into why it's not an RPG at some point, I imagine. But this is pretty much a Zelda game.
It's almost exactly like Zelda. Like, oh, we need our own version of Zelda for the PlayStation. What do? Oh, here's Alundra.
I did do a little bit of research, and this company made another game before this for the Genesis called Landstalker. And it is pretty much the precursor to this game. Like, the character looks the same. It's the same vibe. And that was like their take of Zelda on the Genesis. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So they just really love Zelda and wanted it to be on other consoles.
We'll get into this in the future, obviously, but there's a sequel to this game on the PS1 as well. And it is a completely different kind of game.
Oh, okay. I knew there was going to be a second one, which I was interested in actually getting to that at some point down the road. But how different is it or why, I guess?
It's like a 3D action game.
Weird.
Like full polygons and everything. So I don't even know if they're connected or like what the deal is there. We will get into that at some point.
Yeah, when we get to that game.
So initial thoughts, like when you're jumping into this game, what were you thinking?
So immediately when we get to those beginning cutscenes, what was your thoughts on this whole mix between gameplay and then this anime cartoon that plays along with it?
So like we even mentioned before, like we both love Persona, and I was getting some of that kind of vibe a little bit, like the anime infused into the game kind of vibe. Like I was hoping that as we went on, maybe there would be a few more anime cutscenes or like, you know, the story would play a bigger part. So I was pretty excited, honestly.
the instant the cartoon stuff came up, and along with the music, it's a very long intro. I was on board for this game. Yes, let's get into this. I'm excited. Much like what you're saying, I was very disappointed that we don't get those cutscenes that often. It's at least from what we played, we never get them again.
Yeah, and just to get it out of the way, we both played roughly, I would say 9 to 10 hours, would you say?
Yes. I played one more extra hour than you. We made it to the same stopping point. That extra hour put into it was exploring.
Well, so I didn't capture at all for this, so everything you're going to see is Mike's capture. I don't know exactly how long I played just because it was hard to keep track with like the saving and loading and like the dying and all that stuff. So my in-game timer, I believe, was around 8.5 before I fought the last boss that I fought.
Okay.
So I would go ahead and say at least another hour for all the saving and all that. So probably 9.5 is where I would put it. But regardless, I mean, this is a long game.
It is. I think overall it's about a 30-hour game. That's just knowing what you're doing. So with us running around and stuff, could be a lot longer. Also with the beginning cutscenes, now that we're watching it back, I'm realizing it's much like D. D gave you those hints to puzzles, and now watching this back, I'm like, oh, this is giving you so many hints to all the things that we were struggling with.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I would have thought of that before, but there were a lot of times throughout this game I used a walkthrough.
Yes.
I tried to never use it. Trying to figure out where to go, trying to figure out stuff like that. I never used it. It's just like, let's say we're on a specific puzzle room and I cannot figure it out. That's when I would use a walkthrough. But I was not like actively looking at it ever.
Right. And I did the same exact thing. I was like, I would think I'm close to the puzzle being solved. And then after multiple attempts of it not being solved, I'm like, I need to look this up because I feel like I'm on the right path and I can't figure this out. And then I look at the walkthrough and it's like, oh, I was on the right path. I just did something out of order.
Exactly. Or you didn't put a rock or a barrel in the exact right spot, you know?
Oh yeah. We're going to get into that later. So the beginning of the game, you start on a boat, which I thought was a really cool touch.
Yeah, I love the beginning. Like, it really sets up this big story and it's very interesting. Like, so Alundra is this different race that can go into people's dreams.
Right. And just that concept alone, I love for a video game.
I thought it was so sick. And then, like, you know, without going too crazy into this, you barely even do it in what we've played.
Right. But granted, I think the next thing after where we stopped is another dream thing that we have to go into. So it's not as often as you think it would be. You're off doing other stuff opposed to going into people's dreams. But I do like the dream stuff when you actually do get to do it.
I loved it. That was my favorite parts. I don't know. They set this big story up with these crazy villains and like all this like demonic shit pretty much. And then it's like, anyway, go fuck around in the mines for an hour, you know?
Yeah. So it's pretty much like the whole thing is these people fall asleep and they get trapped in their dreams. And so you have to go in and kind of rescue them to wake them up. And that's pretty much the entire plot of the game.
Yeah, you're like the reverse Freddy Krueger.
Oh, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that. There's so much other stuff of like, there's these giant ape gorilla things that are, you're prepping to fight them at the end, I would assume.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were going to do pretty early on because they were kind of building it up and then you just kind of like stop talking about it.
Yeah, they build it up and you see this giant creature and they keep amping this up and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, so yeah, go out to the desert.
That's what I mean. And like, to get us started on the first point that I have here, the story starts off so strong and I'm so in, and then it just kind of ruins itself in a way. Like, not to say that it's bad, just in the fact that it doesn't matter at all.
At least for what we played, I would agree, yes.
First 2 to 3 hours, I would say there's a lot of story, and it makes you feel like this is going to be a narrative that connects throughout everything you're doing. And then you hit a point where that just stops. So I'm wondering if it's like, you know, play 3 or 4 hours, then you go off and explore and do all the stuff, then maybe another 3-4 hours of story, something like that.
It might be one of those things of, oh, we gave you a lot of story up front. Now we got to kind of slow it down a little bit so you have more of a game to play.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. It's just, I don't know. I really liked that stuff.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you that it slows down dramatically, almost instantly. I would say after you do, I think the second dungeon is when it really just plateaus and not much happens at all. But I also think where we stopped, it started to build itself back up again. Because once you get back from the desert, that guy starts accusing you of being a demon. So I'm like, oh, okay, things are happening. Like, we're getting back into the drama and something's going to happen.
Yeah. And then you talk to everybody else and they're like, just ignore him. He's a weirdo.
Except for like the old lady who yells at you and says that you shouldn't be alive or something like that.
She's like, you should be dead or something like that. But yeah, so the main goal of this game is, what are they called? You have to go around and get 7 things. Is it 7 seals?
Relics, I thought, maybe. Or no, yeah, they might be seals.
I forget, but yeah, that's the main goal of the game, and that's how you're going to stop this big bad villain guy.
Which also, correct me if I'm wrong, that is Zelda too, right? The seals.
Yeah. I don't know if it's seals. It's something like that though. Like that's, you're going to these places and getting these 7 things.
Yeah.
No, I mean this is literally just like taking a Link to the Past and then kind of trying to put their own spin on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the whole beginning of the game. You're going into people's dreams, then you're exploring different dungeons. And then at the end of it, you're either getting a new item or like some sort of upgrade in some way.
Yeah. Or you get I think after every dungeon, you always increase your health. That's always a big thing. Yeah. And then sometimes a weapon, sometimes not. It just depends on what that is.
Yeah. I mean, like there's the one where you get the upgrade so that you can walk through the sand or one you can walk through water. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Another time you get a sword.
Yeah. I found the sword to be pretty good, especially when you charge it up.
What?
If you hold down the attack button, you can charge the sword.
I did not know that. Okay. Well, that's something new.
Oh my God. All right. Really quick. Just to jump to probably what is close to the end of this discussion. The last boss you fought, the water boss.
Yeah.
What weapon did you use?
The sword.
Did it take you an obscenely long time to beat it?
Yes.
Okay. So I did the same thing, but I used the mace or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And I fought the boss for what seemed like 10 minutes straight.
It goes on for so long.
What you're supposed to do, which I saw this in a walkthrough, so I didn't come up with this myself. It only takes 10 hits to kill him if you hit him with a charged sword attack every time.
Wow. I never would have thought to hold down the attack button.
I didn't think of it either, especially because the other weapons don't have abilities or anything. Like, yeah, the one can break rocks, but there's nothing like hold down a button to do this at all in this game. So I wouldn't think to do that.
And it's one of those things which also, this will come up later on too, it might be in the manual. Unfortunately, whenever I went to check the manual for a few things, Internet Archive is now down to the hacking. So I can't even verify if it's in there or not. I couldn't even use the manual.
Yeah, that's a big bummer. I'm hoping it'll be back up soon.
And that's the only site that had the manual, so I was screwed.
Forced to look at a walkthrough.
Yep, unfortunately. Because my biggest complaint was with the map. And I think there might be a map in the manual to show you exactly what everything is in the village. But whenever I went to go to the shop to buy something, it took me a good 20, 30 minutes running around to each building trying to figure out which one was the shop.
Yeah, I also saw in a walkthrough that you're supposed to use the stuff that you find, the falcons, to buy stuff.
Wait, really?
I never found it, though.
You never found a falcon?
No, I never found a place to use them.
Oh, yeah. Because that was a huge question of mine. What are those used for? Because I had a whole bunch of them and I didn't know what to do with them.
I didn't want to go too hard with like looking things up, so I didn't want to spoil anything. But apparently you use those in a certain shop and you can buy different things. I'm assuming upgrades.
Okay. Well, at least there is a meaning to it. That's great.
Yeah, I know. Getting them like this whole time, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, because I don't even think it shows up in your inventory, right?
No, I think it just shows like the amount that you have like in the stats, but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we went off the rails pretty quick here.
We always do.
So what do you think about the combat? Because that's like a decent part of the game, I would say.
It is. I honestly think this goes for just normal enemies and this goes for even the bosses. I think it's a relatively very easy game. None of the enemies seem complicated. The bosses, like we said, we spend a lot of time on that one boss. Even that doesn't feel like you're just spending a good amount of time, but you're never struggling or sweating to stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to learning the pattern. I beat them all on the first try, besides the water one, just because I was second guessing myself because it was taking so long.
Yeah, I would say the water one is the one I used the most healing items on.
Me too.
And that was just about it. I do like how unique every boss fight is, even though it comes down to the same mechanics.
They are unique, but they are very like just boring.
Yeah.
Like there's just not really anything exciting about them. Like it's like, yeah, you wait for them to be vulnerable, you attack them, then you dodge again. There's nothing that makes them truly unique. They just, have different attacks.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, I meant they're visually unique with how the attacks are. Yeah. Not fight wise. Fight wise, it's just the same boring fight every single time, except this time it's a mummy instead of the water creature. It's
yeah, there's the one that's the bunch of gargoyles that you fight. You know what I mean?
Yep. And that was the only thing is, even with the normal enemies, especially if they were like the stronger enemies that you run into, the tactic was to just pin them against the wall and just keep hitting them. And as long as you keep hitting them, you keep interrupting their attacks. They can't attack you back and you kill them.
So I kind of feel the same way as you about the combat. I genuinely think it's fine. I don't really have a lot of complaints. It's there. It's Zelda combat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But where the problems for me started was when you got to the desert and the enemies took 10 plus hits to kill.
Yes. Well, especially the desert is where it got really annoying, because in the desert, it's whenever you have those worms now popping up, and those you have to hit once and then you go underground, and then you have to wait for them to pop back up, hit them again, they go underground, and it's like, come on, I'm tired of waiting.
Well, what it kind of boiled down to me was you have to use the bombs to kill them, because the bombs kill them in one hit.
If you could time it correctly, yes.
So I would throw a bomb, they would start coming towards me, and I would attack them to push them back into the bomb.
That's what I did with those giant goblin creature things.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do something. You can't sit there and attack them, especially when there's like 5 or 6 on the screen.
Yeah. Which was very satisfying when you 3 of them bundled up coming at you and the bomb took out all 3. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely simple, but I just thought it was really frustrating that all of a sudden they take a ton of hits and then you get to the area after the desert and then the enemies don't take that many hits anymore. Like, why?
Oh, yeah. It kind of ramps up in difficulty and then it goes back to normal. It's like, why did we ramp up in the first place if you're dropping it down again?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The desert area as a whole is the worst area that I played in this game.
I agree.
If we weren't doing this show, I would have quit there. 100%.
I mean, the biggest frustration, and this might be the same reason for you, was just you can't run and you can't jump very high in the desert. And I'm like, come on, it's just sand. You can jump normal height in sand.
I don't know. I was just so frustrated. I don't know what it was for me because, yeah, that part is annoying. But to get to my next point, I think the puzzles in this game are tedious as hell.
And it goes back to what we talked about with Silent Hill. They're vague. I think that was the biggest issue with me, was thinking I have the right solution to a puzzle, but because of how vaguely worded it is, I'm like, this could be 5 different things that I'm trying to do here.
Well, that, and even if it's not vague and you know what to do, the penalty for failing is so high in a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
It's like you mess up one thing, you got to leave the room and reset the whole puzzle and do the whole thing again from the beginning.
The resetting the rooms almost made me quit.
Well, dude, okay. To even bring it to something else, the platforming is the same way. I think the platforming is kind of bad in this game.
It's quite bad. Only because, and I could be wrong on how this is actually working, but it seems like the object detection of what is a platform and what isn't is off a little bit. So your sprite will hit things that you should be missing, but it's like, oh no, your sprite came in collision with this object, so we have to stop you from the jump. It's like, but I did it. I'm following the rules of the game.
But then, at the same time, it's like the game wants you to do that thing where you walk off and then jump.
Yeah, you have to hover over empty pixels and then do the jump.
But then all of a sudden, the collision is perfect. All of a sudden, it works perfectly when you need to do it.
Yes. The amount of jumps that screwed me over because of that stupid, especially in the sand. If you're in the sand, you can't jump high, so you got to stand on concrete to do a bigger jump. But yet, if you're on the concrete, it's like, no, technically you're still standing on the sand. So you have to back up a little bit more or forward a little bit more. And then you'll see me do these little test jumps before I do a real jump, just to be sure that I'm on the concrete and not the sand.
It's literally you got to be on this exact right part of the concrete or it won't work. It's just insane.
And that applies with literally everything else in the game. All the ledges, all the platforms you have to do. you have to be so precise and kind of aim to do it wrong, and then it counts as it doing it right.
Well, one of the more frustrating platforming things that I did, and I'm sorry to bring up something specific, so you have to find this, but in the final dungeon that we did, there was that part where there's the spinning rock, like the spinning balls.
Oh my God. Yes.
I could not tell you how many times I did that. Just like an insane amount.
When you talked about resetting the room, I thought for sure that was the room you were talking about and that was the point where I wanted to quit. This room specifically, I did not want to do it anymore. Even following a walkthrough, I was like, oh, hit the ball when it hits this point. I was still messing up every single time.
I'm just going to admit it right now. From the desert onwards, I abused the fuck out of save states because I had enough.
Yep, I almost did.
Well, like I was saying, even if the puzzle is not vague and hard to figure out, if you're doing a platforming challenge or a puzzle and you make one little mistake, you have to reset the whole thing. So like I would try, then I would fail, reset a few times. Then after 4 or 5 times, sometimes I don't even know what I need to do yet. And I'm resetting it 4 or 5 times, just trying to figure that out. So what I would end up doing is just figure out the first part, save state. Figure out the next part, save state. Because I'm just like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't.
I honestly don't blame you. And it was the worst with that room with the balls because you would say you try. I always started with the right one. I don't know which one you started with.
I usually start with the left one, but
okay.
Doesn't matter.
I would always do the right one because I felt like that one was more finicky on getting it into the right spot. And then let's say it took me 10 attempts to get it into the right spot. Finally, like, cool, that's in the perfect placement. Go to the next one, and I screw that up, and it goes into the wrong one. I'm like, come on, it took me so long just to get this first one right.
I don't know how you did that without save states because I was ready to scream with save states. So
I was internally so frustrated. I'm like, but I can do this. I just need to get through it.
Well, on top of everything I just said, the enemies also respawn every single time you leave the room.
Yep.
So like, for example, in this room we're talking about, these turtles keep coming back. So now you have to kill them. Then you have to try the puzzle again. So it's like, you're just constantly doing the same things over and over again. And that goes for this whole game. Whether it's platforming, whether it's anything, you're just constantly trying over and over again. And it just seems like a waste of time.
Yeah. And whenever there's that one room in the one dungeon where you have to kill the 3 worms to get a barrel to then jump over the sand. I forget which dungeon it was.
That's in the desert.
Okay. So with that is like, you learn, oh, there's quicksand in this one area. And they're like, okay, now I know what to do. You reset the room. Oh, you didn't place the barrel close enough to where you needed it to. So now you got to reset the room again because you just learned a little bit more and you have to keep killing those worms.
Are you talking about the one where the quicksand is at the bottom center of the room?
Yes. And you have to place those 2 barrels to jump over the quicksand.
So here's a little trick. You don't have to do that. You can just hug the wall and it'll let you go there.
Oh, okay. Well, great.
After failing that many times, I just got angry and just tried it and it worked. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot.
There you go. I never would have thought of doing that since you just weren't allowed to over enter that area. So,
I mean, even this water area you're showing right now, it's just a nightmare.
I was excited when I finally got to the water part. I'm like, oh, there's so much I wanted to explore that I didn't get a chance to because of the water. Did you think the swimming was fine? Or because for me, it was terrible to control. You kept getting caught on the walls and stuff.
It didn't feel fluid, if that makes sense. Like it felt very stiff and it's swimming. It should be fluid.
I was so frustrated with trying to get around obstacles while swimming. So I'm glad you agree with that one.
After I got the swimming thing, I barely even used it. It is so funny that you're showing this footage right now because you're doing the exact same thing I did.
What? So what is it that I did?
You don't use any of your items and then you find a new one and it's like, oh, you can't store it anymore. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just use it.
Yep. There's just, I guess that brings up too about how it's not a very difficult game because you just stack up all of your items and you never need to really use them until maybe a boss fight.
Well, that's the thing. Like it's like Zelda 2 in the way that you can break pots, rocks, grass, whatever to get healing. So unless you're really, really about to die, you never need to use your items.
Nope, not at all. And actually, I think it's in the desert dungeon as well, where there's that one room where there's a plant up on the one thing, and if you throw it, it gives you a herb that you can just stack up on. So I just kept resetting that room, and I kept going. I just stacked back up until max, and I'm like, all right, now I'm good to go for the rest of this level at least.
I don't think I ever found that because I would have did the same thing.
I think it was
honestly, like if it was in the desert or afterwards, I kind of just like stopped trying to explore a lot just because I was over it.
I get that. Oh yeah, here. So I was taking the long way back here to reset it, and then I go back, and then all you have to do is just dodge all the enemies. You don't even have to fight. And then up there is that plant. So if you grab that plant and throw it, it'll turn into an herb that you can grab.
I did not know that because I just sliced it with my sword and moved on.
Oh, yeah. When I picked it up, I'm like, this does something. And I tried throwing it into the water thing, and that did something. But then I just threw it on the ground. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what that does.
Yeah, I just thought maybe it was like just something that you break for money or healing, and it just didn't trigger that time. So I just moved on.
Yeah, sometimes you will throw it and nothing happens. So you got to go back and reset it to have it come back again.
No, but I totally would have done that if I found that. So.
But yeah, I agree. Resetting the rooms, absolutely nightmare of a mechanic. If the enemies didn't come back, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. But having to constantly fight your way through again and again and again, just no.
Yeah. So this game everywhere is called an action RPG. And I don't think I agree with that in really any sense of that.
And why is that?
There's no leveling up. I mean, this is just Zelda. Is Zelda an RPG? I've never heard anybody say Zelda's an RPG.
I don't think so, no.
Honestly, this is borderline a puzzle game.
More or less, yeah.
You spend like the majority of your time solving puzzles, which you can guess is why I didn't like it that much. But I was expecting more combat, you know? That I was just expecting it to be more about fighting and like finding gear and like, yeah, you get upgrades, but it's very rarely.
And it's kind of like you get the upgrades when you need them. So you'll be like, oh, here, I bought leather armor. Okay, that's just slightly better. But they don't give you the stats of why it's slightly better. It's just, oh, this is better than what I had before.
I was thinking the same thing, especially when you get the new the flail and then when you get the upgraded sword. It's like, what about this is better than my dagger? Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just generally better? I'm just going to have to take your word for it, I guess.
No, I agree entirely with that. And it wouldn't be that difficult to add those elements into this game, I don't think.
I mean, just having some numbers next to the stats, I mean, numbers next to the weapons of what they do wouldn't be that crazy, but I don't know. It might just be a victim of the internet saying this is an RPG and it never claimed to be.
True.
You know, how can we know? But if anybody ever told me this game was an RPG, I would say you are very, very wrong.
A big complaint I had was with the graphics. I don't know if you felt this way, where due to the way that some of the platforms were laid out, it was impossible to tell if the platform was above you or below you or to the side of you. Especially
in the final dungeon that we did, where there's a lot of parts where you have to break the rocks.
Yes.
And I can't tell, like, is this down below? Is it, sometimes you'll just like walk into something and fall and you're like, oh, I guess that's down there.
Yep. I was so frustrated. And they came to light whenever, what was that dungeon? The cave one, whenever you had to go in and rescue like those people in the cave.
The mines.
Yeah. Whenever I was running around the trolley area for that one puzzle, trying to figure out where to go, didn't even realize that there were steps right there in front of me because it blended in with the environment. And I didn't realize they were steps. I just happened to jump, catch the ledge of it. I'm like, oh, I can go up here and now I can finish this puzzle.
I didn't have too much of that, but I do agree with you in general that like the graphics just aren't that good, in my opinion. Like, obviously, if you listen to this show, you know that we love pixel art. Like, I'm not going to talk shit on a game for pixel art ever, but this game just almost has like a cheap look to it, if that makes sense.
I can kind of see what you're going for. I wasn't opposed to how everything looked. I kind of liked it in a sense. I just feel like there's some flaw to what they were doing that we haven't seen in any other pixel games like this. I feel like most games are able to distinguish where you're able to go and what you're not able to do easily. And this one was just so meshed together.
I think a lot of that is just like the environments are so samey a lot of the time. Like, you know, you're in an area and like you can't even tell what rooms you're in half the time. Like it all looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, each specific place is very easy to distinguish from each other. Like obviously the desert, the mines, this cave, it all looks different. But at the end of the day, like once you're in there, you have to just rely on memorization to know what you're doing because everything just looks exactly the same.
And that hurts you a lot whenever you're trying to do a puzzle or you get through a lot of the dungeon and then it's like, oh, you unlocked a key or you found a key. It's like, well, what was this for? I don't remember needing to unlock a door at all. And that's because like 6 rooms pack, you needed to unlock a door, but because of all the other puzzles, you forget that door existed.
Straight up, I did the exact same thing. I'm like, I found a key. I'm like, shit, did I miss this?
So what did you feel about the music?
I thought it was fine. I thought the town music was really good.
We're going to keep saying it. It sounded like Zelda a lot of the times too.
I just didn't think that the majority of the music besides the town music was like very memorable.
Nah. There's that one with the desert. I think it was the desert. Or it could have been the aqua or the ocean one. Where there's a really high flute that like would hold out a note and then go back to that same note again for a very long time. And like, oh, this is hurting my ears listening to this over and over again.
I also just don't know if I didn't like the music because I was stuck on something for a long time and just hearing it over and over again. Because like each area has their own music again. So it's like you're just hearing that the entire time. No changes, nothing. So let's say you're getting really frustrated in the desert. I hope you don't hate that music.
Yeah, and that was my big complaint with Master Blaster or Blaster Master, whatever the 2 words are. It was literally that same thing of being stuck in an area and hearing that rock riff over and over again for like an hour. I'm like, I hate this song by now.
Hey, at least that one had some riffs. This one doesn't even have any good melodies.
That's true. The one thing that stood out to me immediately was when you pick up those health diamonds, it sounds like you're doing a special trick in Tony Hawk.
It does. It does.
So every time I picked one up, I could not stop thinking about that. Like a gold text coming up of like, oh, you did a cool trick.
Yeah, it's like a weird metallic sound. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But I mean, they do a lot of cool little things. I'm always a fan of little details. So like whenever you're in the town, the windmill is squeaking on top of a house. And like, that's a little detail that they don't need to add, but it's really cool that they do.
Yeah, it makes it a little more immersive.
Yeah. And just the fact of like when that one character dies, I think Olin, and then there's just no music playing at all. And all you hear is the environment and the wind and stuff. And like, this is so cool. And like that they just remove all that. So it's very dreary and very sad that this happened.
I hear you. I do like that. Setting the tone.
Exactly.
All right. So for my next complaint, is there a way to look at the map?
I had that same comment that I was going to ask too. I think there's only a map for the town. I don't think there's an actual map for the rest of the game.
So did you go to the fortune teller lady that tells you where to go?
I would only go to her to get my health and magic healed up. That's the only reasons. I never actually talked to her to figure out anything else.
So if you talk to her again, she tells you what your next objective is in the game, in case you don't know.
Oh, okay.
And if you talk to her again, you pay her $10 and she'll bring up a map and show you where to go. And she brings up this map of the entire game world.
Oh.
And then it highlights where you're supposed to go next. The map exists. There's just no way to look at it. And it's a very nice looking map too. It looks like Zelda.
So here's what I just found on a quick search, that it's done in DeviantArt. So it looks like they're taking sections of it to put it together.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that in the game. I'm trying to find the one that's actually in the game.
Because honestly, that was my biggest complaint too, was just, I don't know where I'm going half the time.
Well, yeah, they're like, you got to go to the desert. And then you're like, I guess I'll just figure it out based on the signs. But like, I just don't understand why they made this cool looking map and then there's no way to look at it in the game.
Is this it?
Yes, this is basically what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks, I mean, I would have loved to have that.
The X is where you are when you're talking to the lady, and this brings this up, and then it puts a little shiny mark on where you're supposed to go.
Ah, that's cool. I guess I should have talked to her a lot more than I did.
But you see this nice map that they made. Like, yeah, it obviously looks better in the game, but why can't I just bring that up and look at it?
I couldn't find a button to do it. The only reason I knew where the desert was because of that hour of exploring that I told you about. And I just happened to find the desert and I was like, all right, well, that's convenient. So then I go back to town and they're like, oh, Sybil wants to talk to you about the desert. And I'm like, I know exactly where that is. I just saw it.
Yeah, I figured out where to go just by like the signs that are around the town that just say like desert this way.
Right, yeah, which was handy. I like that they had those signs everywhere.
But no, I just think like A Link to the Past has that really nice map that looks just like that. So like, why didn't they just do the same thing? This is on PS1. That's on Super Nintendo. So it was clearly a choice to not have that.
It could just be a simple button that we didn't push or something, maybe.
Well, yeah, you also don't use most of the buttons on the controller. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, we've like talked about most of my complaints. The only one I have that we haven't brought up yet is I feel like the save spots are too far away in the dungeons.
Yep.
If you fuck up, you're loading that game and you're going back far.
But how often does that happen? Because I feel like it's not that difficult where you're dying all the time.
I feel you. I mean, I only really died on the bosses ever.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Maybe a few times when I like wasn't paying attention.
True.
I don't know. There's a couple times I died like fighting a bunch of enemies and I was just like spamming it to try and hurry up. And before you knew it, I died.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just, just something I noticed.
Yeah, at least they're kind enough to give you a save point right before the boss fight. And like it's coming at that point, but then it's like, okay, at least I don't have to redo all this stuff to come back here.
Yeah, you're right.
So aside from like complaining about it, what's some positives you have?
No, I love the story. I love the vibe of this game. It's definitely pretty much a darker Zelda, which is very appealing to me.
Yep.
We've complained about the combat, the platforming, and the puzzles. I do think there are good elements of all of those things. I just think that they went either too far or they didn't put enough care into certain things. I don't know which it is for a lot of this, but there's just these little things that take it too far, and then all of a sudden it's like not fun anymore.
Exactly. I can agree with all of that.
But it's hard because like I wanted to like this game a lot more than I did. I started off really liking it. Like pretty much until the desert, I was like, I'm in on this. And then, the enemies all of a sudden are sponges. The puzzles are extremely tedious. You're doing 10 puzzles in a row that are just putting symbols on other symbols.
Yep. And each one's different in their own way.
It's just really, it's like, I don't know if it's the right word, but it's boring and uninspired a lot of the time. It feels like padding sometimes.
I think that's the best word to use. It's just, hey, we have this one puzzle idea. Let's use it for this entire dungeon and just mix it up a little bit here and there. Because, with those simple ones, that stupid little poem you have to read to put the right order for the stones. That's the biggest example of vagueness for a thing. So I wrote down the story. So then I get there, I'm like, okay, do they want it in this order? Do they want it in this order? What order are they looking for? Because just the story, I can interpret that 3 different ways of 3 different orders that they want it in.
And that's the one where you have to stack them, right?
Yeah.
So I thought I had it figured out, and then I couldn't get them to stack right. I kept like throwing one over them or something.
Yeah. The throwing mechanic, it seems like you always throw it too far or too short, and you can never get the perfect throw.
It's just like the precision that this game demands from you is crazy.
Oh, especially with the jumps, where you're on a timed jump thing and you have to be very precise. The amount of times I've fallen through a hole just because I was rushing it and trying to get done as fast as possible because I was on a timer. I was so mad.
Yeah, but for other positives, I don't think I have any other ones.
A big thing for me is how big the world is. You didn't really explore all that much, right?
I did in the beginning. I didn't go to like corner to corner, but like, I looked around.
I forget. I think it was after one of the dungeons. I just started to explore for some reason. And I got lost with how deep I went into it. And I found these areas that were so incredible. There's one area, it's like up towards the northeast somewhere. And when you're walking around, there's just trees, like mimic trees that come to life and will chase you and scream at you when they're like, it absolutely scared the shit out of me because I wasn't expecting a tree to just become alive. So there's that whole section. With the desert, there's still even more beyond the desert up north. More temples and more cliffs you got to climb up. So it's just like, even with all the exploring I did, I still haven't seen a lot of this game. And it's just like, that adds the intrigueness to want to see more and want to see, how do I get to this area? What does this area have to do with anything? And I really love that.
I do like that. And I did go to the northern area of the desert. You can't go there until you have the boots that let you walk normal in sand. I went up there a little bit and there was just so many strong enemies that I left. But I don't know. I think it's just the tediousness of a lot of it that makes me not want to play anymore. I want to keep playing and I want to keep like finding new stuff. But, knowing that I'm going to get to another dungeon, there's going to be 2 puzzles that they reuse 16 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I don't know. What's the point, And you were saying the story probably does ramp up again. But having not seen a lot of it for a while, I was just kind of like, why do I want to keep playing this?
I understand that thought entirely. It's just with how cool and how big the world is, it does get boring very fast. But I do like how they give you that sign that you shouldn't be in the area with the stronger enemies, which is typical with most games. That was the same with whenever you had to go to that guy's mansion. And I was starting to explore that area a little bit, and those giant goblin guys were down below. And I'm like, I'm not messing with them right now because I don't have anything.
I did the exact same thing. I saw them and I was like, I got to get out of here.
But then another big thing is, again, little details. Whenever you're at the cliff area and jumping up to get to the desert, in front of that guy's house is a well. And I was walking by and I'm like, why is there a well there? And I just jumped into it, and you can actually go into the well and there's an item down there.
I jumped into it as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So just those little things of if you want to explore, there's things for you. And they thought of that ahead of time to put those little features in.
Yeah, I think this game had a lot of ambition. I think that it has a lot of good ideas, but I just think a lot of it is not executed well. And at the end of the day, like a true sequel to this probably would have fixed a lot of it. But it didn't get that. It got something weird and different.
I agree completely.
What would have been sick is if they took it like a 3D Zelda-like as far as like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
Ooh.
Like a really scary, like weird nightmare going into people's dreams and stuff like that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But I don't think they did that.
Because you already had those dark elements. Just go more into it. Lean into that darkness even more.
But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much out of notes here.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Before we get to our scores, we're going to look at a couple reviews. I'm very torn on my score still. The conversation was very negative, but I don't know that this is a bad game. I don't know.
I will say I think this conversation has changed my view a good bit.
I have a number written down, but I think it's the kind of number where you're going to be mad at me if I say it.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to read these reviews and then we'll get into that. So it received almost entirely positive reviews, like very, very high scores. Absolute PlayStation gave it an 8 out of 10 and said, in the end, Alundra winds up being a rather uninspired but enjoyable enough experience. You will probably walk away feeling a real sense of accomplishment for solving all of the puzzles, but the game itself will, in all likelihood, not leave much of a lasting impression.
I love this. Yeah, this game sucks. I mean, it's not inspired and you're not going to have fun, but hey, go check it out.
8 out of 10. That's why I picked it, because it's like, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. But anyway, it kind of sucks.
And he is right on the nose with a lot of this. I feel like if you figure out a lot of these puzzles on your own, there's accomplishment there. Like you feel that because there's just a lot where I would probably spend hours just on one puzzle alone trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the ones that got me a lot where it would be like, put a barrel on the corner of this cliff to jump up to this next thing. Like those are the kind that I had to look up because I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? Or like stack 2 barrels in a weird angle to jump up. You know what I mean? It's like, I would have never thought of that.
The one that really confused me on probably never would have seen this was it's with the stones on the platforms that light up. And there's those symbols on the back wall and then the letters underneath the symbols for northwest, south, and east. Those letters are so unreadable that I wouldn't have put the 2 together that, oh, that's an N and that goes to the star.
It's really strange because you do that like 3 times. The first one, I feel like you can't read, but then the second one, I feel like you can.
It's so confusing. I don't understand it.
I don't know. But German magazine Video Games gave it an 87 out of 100 and said, action scenes and puzzle bits are not only in a balanced relationship with each other, but also, in terms of requirements, walk exactly on the fine line between a relaxed flow of the game and a stubborn level of difficulty. For new PlayStation fans, Alundra may be the wrong playground. However, if you like the pure switch and sliding puzzles and value a great story, this is the perfect place for you.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that all that much either. I feel like there's just so many better options for puzzles.
I just think the puzzles are just so whatever. Like they're not really interesting or fulfilling to me in the way that like you just have to figure out this one thing you're supposed to do and then do variations of that for like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings us to our scores. So I think I'm going to let you go first.
I knew you were going to do that. I'm very torn because the heart of the game, I love it. I love the relaxed nature of it, like the exploring, but that's not the game at the core. The game is the dungeons and the bosses, and that's just not fun. I think the first 2 dungeons, great. After that, I'm just like, gotta do this again and like another boss. There's so much potential, I want to say. There's a lot of potential there that it could have been a lot better than what it was. And I have to go even lower than what my range was, just by a little bit because of our conversations. I'm like, yeah, I guess that really wasn't as fun as I'm remembering it being. I'm just going to go with a 6.
Okay. So I'm not crazy. I share a lot of the same views that you just said. I mean, a lot of potential, a lot of different things going on in this game. It's just, I feel like most of them don't hit the mark. There's just that one little thing that ruins every element of the game for me. Like, you know, the platforming's fine until it's not. The combat is fun until it's not. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It just ends up being kind of a tedious and frustrating experience. So I'm going to go with a 5.5.
I had the feeling from the beginning you might go that low. I would be too crazy to say like, oh, this is an 8, which I thought in the beginning. Like, oh, this is probably the highest we've ever done so far. And that number slowly went down.
For the first like 4 to 5 hours, I was sitting at a 7.5. And then before I did the desert dungeon, I was sitting at a 6 to a 7. And then after that, I was at a 6. And then at the end, I went to a 5.5. I feel like we have this opinion a lot with these games as we go on where, you know, you like it in the beginning and then it kind of just falls apart at some point, you know?
Yeah, and that's honestly the reason why we had to put so many hours into these RPGs, or quote unquote RPGs, because if we base it just off of 3 hours, this would have gotten a much higher score. But because you had to play for a lot longer to get like the full feel of the game, that's where the numbers just start to dip a lot.
That's crazy. That is actually a good argument for why we do this, because if we just did this like we do a normal episode and did like, you know, 3 hours, maybe 4 or 5 if we really like it, I think we would have given this way higher scores, which is so funny.
Oh, 100%. And I think the reason we thought of that was just because of playing Persona 4. And we thought, oh, if we just did the first 4 hours, that's just the intro. So we would have to play even more. So we kind of took that mentality into the rest of these longer games that we've done. And I think it pays off to actually put a little bit more extra time into it.
I mean, it definitely paid off here.
Yeah. So oddly enough, we don't have a tie, which is surprising.
Wow.
We found a new number. But Alundra will be at number 40, below Destruction Derby, and above Parappa the Rappa at 5.75.
It feels bad when you put 10 hours into a game and give it a score like that, but I don't know. I wanted to like it. Just couldn't.
I mean, it was our top, with the RPGs, I think it's our highest rated one, right? Or no, Persona was higher than that by just 0.25. So it's just slightly better.
I was also thinking about that as well. It's like, would I rather play Persona or this? You know, that's always in my mind. I think I would rather play Persona just by a little bit.
Yeah, both have the same redundancy. Both are the same problems, I would say. But Persona just felt more polished and more fleshed out, when this one just needed a little bit more work.
It's funny, Persona does the exact same thing we were talking about too, where the story is really involved and then it just goes away.
Yes, and the repeated dungeons over and over again.
I'm wondering if this is going to be a common theme with PS1 RPGs. I hope not.
I really hope not. I want, like we said, at the beginning of this one, I was very hopeful this was going to be the one to be in the top. I hope that there's one RPG out there that's just great the whole way through.
To be fair, we haven't played any of the Final Fantasy games, so...
That is true. That is very true.
I mean, we're intentionally saving the better ones for later. I mean, we don't want to do all the good stuff early.
Yeah, and then 2 years later, we're like, yeah, we kind of already used that one, so we can't do it again.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got this comeback episode for us out of the way. Get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, and next week's going to be a big game. I'm excited for that one, so little spoiler, or what's that word? Little teaser for next week to check that out.
It's our first sequel on the show. That's all I'll say.
I'm excited.
I am very excited because I already know I love this game. So, how's it going to feel playing it again? Because I haven't played this in a while. So
That's true. Yeah, you could be ruining it for you by doing this again.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe, as well as give us a rating on podcast services. We'll see you next week.